My name is Margaret Allen. I'm 68, and on my birthday, my own son taught the room how to laugh at me. The party was at Evan's house. Long table, a cake shaped like a checkbook sat in the middle. Claire, my daughter-in-law, tapped her glass. To Mom, she said, smiling at the guests, a legend at saving stamps and coupons? Laughter. Evan put an arm around my shoulders. Mom, we've been talking. It's time to modernize. You don't need to juggle accounts anymore. I manage fine, I said. He raised his voice so the room could hear. She still writes checks. Bless her heart. More laughter. Claire slid a tablet in front of me. Here's the plan. We'll move your money into a family investment account. Safer. Higher yield. Evan will manage it. My pension and the insurance? Everything, she said. About 800,000, right? The room quieted. Evan nodded. We'll give you an allowance so you can relax. No more stress. An allowance? It's love, Claire said. You don't have to understand the tools. Just trust your family. A cousin shouted, Do it! Let the finance guy handle it. I looked at the cake's tiny icing ledger lines. I remembered double shifts at the station, my husband's night calls, the mornings I packed 2 lunches for Evan, the envelopes labeled heat, taxes, college. Evan slid a stylus toward me. Sign here, Mom. It just consolidates. I didn't touch it. What if I say no? He smiled wider. Then you'll keep paying late fees because you can't keep up. Everybody knows you missed 2 payments last month. I didn't. My voice was steady, my hands weren't. Claire leaned in. It's okay. Aging is real. That's why we're stepping up. The guests stared like I was a storm they hoped would pass. Someone whispered, Just sign. Don't make it weird. Evan pushed the tablet into my hands. This is the grown-up choice. I set it down. The grown-up choice is reading before signing. He exhaled. Fine, read. It's just a transfer authorization. I read the header. Irrevocable Management Authority, I said. Claire's smile froze. Standard language. The candles burned low. Evan lowered his voice but kept the smile. Mom, don't embarrass us. I looked at those faces, heat pressed behind my eyes. I swallowed it. Happy birthday, I said and pushed the tablet back. Claire laughed too loudly. She's kidding, give her a minute. Evan took the mic. Folks, change is hard. We'll handle it tomorrow. Mom, we'll swing by with the papers. Applause. I cut the cake with careful hands and said nothing. That night, at home, I opened my old metal file box. Every receipt, policy, bank letter. I laid them out like ribs. On a blank page, I wrote 4 words in blue ink. Audit Evan and Claire. If they wanted me small, they should have picked a different birthday. The next morning, I went to Evan's office downtown. Grant and Allen Wealth Management. My husband's last name still on the door, but the man inside had none of his decency. Claire greeted me in a beige suit and sharper smile. Mrs. Allen, didn't expect you so soon. Coffee? I'll pass, I said. I came for my paperwork. Evan's office smelled like new money and borrowed confidence. He was behind a walnut desk, tie loosened, phone to his ear. When he saw me, he said, Give me 5, Roger, and hung up. Mom, you didn't need to come down here. I told you I'd handle everything. I'd like to review what I signed, I said. He chuckled, glancing at Claire. You didn't sign yet, but we've already set up the framework. Family account, safer rate, all under one umbrella. I didn't authorize any transfers, I replied. Where's my authorization sheet? Claire slid a folder across the table. See? Nothing scary. It's all online now. You just log in and... I don't do online, I do paper. She blinked. That's exactly why we're helping. You forget passwords, right? Remember the mix-up with your cable bill? That was your son changing the Wi-Fi name, I said flatly. Evan sighed, pushing back his chair. Mom, you're overreacting. Look, we're trying to protect you. You wouldn't believe how many seniors get scammed every day. I worked 39 years managing accounts at the Postal Credit Union, I said. I know what a scam looks like. He smirked. Yeah, and you retired 10 years ago. Things change. Let the next generation handle the numbers. I stared at him. You mean my numbers? Silence. Claire shifted, pretending to tidy the folder. It's a family partnership. You'll thank us later. I won't, I said, when I can't buy milk without asking permission. Evan leaned forward, voice lower. Don't make this emotional. It's simple math. No, I said. Simple math is you don't take from someone who earned it. He laughed once, short and mean. Mom, you're acting like we're thieves. I picked up the pen from his desk, the one engraved Grant and Allen. If you were just my employee, I'd have fired you. Claire's tone sharpened. You're being ungrateful. Evan's covering your bills, your property tax, everything. That's real love. Love doesn't need a signature, I said, standing. But theft always leaves one. Evan exhaled, jaw tight. You're exhausting, Mom. Fine, keep your money. But when you mess up, don't expect a bailout. I smiled faintly. I never needed one. As I reached the door, he muttered, You'll come around. Everyone does. I stopped just long enough to say, You'll wish I did sooner. Outside, the cold air hit like clarity. I stood on the sidewalk staring at his name on the frosted glass. Grant and Allen Wealth Management. Maybe it was time the world learned which Allen actually managed her wealth. 3 weeks later, my debit card stopped working. At the grocery store, the cashier whispered, It says insufficient funds, Mrs. Allen. I laughed softly, thinking it was a glitch. I had $812,000 in savings. At home, I logged into my account. Access denied, password reset notice. I called the bank, still half believing it was a mistake. The manager's tone turned careful. Mrs. Allen, your primary account was transferred last Friday to an investment fund under a co-trustee authorization. Whose name? He hesitated. Evan Grant. My mouth went dry. There's been a fraud. He paused again. Actually, ma'am, the paperwork includes your signature and notary's seal. I gripped the phone tighter. I never signed anything. We can open a dispute, but it'll take weeks. The funds are already consolidated into a separate entity. I hung up and stared at the kitchen wall until it blurred. My husband's photo sat above the sink, the same spot he'd kept our budget notebook for 35 years. I whispered, You'd know what to do. The next morning, I went back to the office. The receptionist smiled too wide. They're in a meeting. I'll wait. An hour later, Evan walked out with Claire, both holding coffee cups and the calmness of people who've already won. Mom, Evan said, fake surprised. You didn't call first. You took my money. He smiled. Technically, we transferred it for safekeeping. Claire's managing the investment side. Claire chimed in. It's all still yours, but now it's productive. You'll thank us when the dividends hit. Give me access, I said. That's not how it works, Evan replied. It's a pooled structure now. So I'm locked out of my own savings? He shrugged. Temporarily. The account's legally in our name, but for you. For me, I repeated, theft wrapped in family stationery. Claire's tone sharpened. You're being paranoid. Maybe it's time to focus on rest homes, not retirement plans. The words stung harder than any theft. You'll regret saying that, I said quietly. Evan laughed. Mom, don't threaten me. This isn't a movie. You raised me to be smart with money. No, I said. I raised you to be honest. You chose the other path. I turned and walked out before the tremor in my voice gave me away. That night, I checked every drawer, every file. My notary seal from my postal days. Gone. My old checkbook. Missing. They'd been in the safe box. Someone had been in my house. For the first time, fear hit me like cold rain. Not just of losing money, but of how easy it had been for my own son to erase me. I sat on the floor, surrounded by papers and memories, and whispered, If they want to treat me like a fool, I'll show them what a fool can do with evidence. Then I opened my ledger and wrote in firm ink, Phase 2, Counter Audit. The house was quiet in that heavy way that makes even clocks sound cruel. I'd stopped cooking, stopped answering the phone. Each ring was just another reminder that Evan and Claire had replaced my name with theirs. My pension deposit, redirected. My property tax, paid on my behalf. Even my heating bill came through their online portal. Every envelope that arrived had their return address printed neatly in the corner. One morning, I found a small box on my porch with a bow. Inside was a smartphone, already set up. A sticky note on top read, So you don't get confused anymore. We've simplified everything. Love, E and C. Simplified. That word burned like acid. I powered it on. Their faces filled the home screen, smiling. Underneath, the banking app they'd installed was locked by fingerprint. Not mine. When I called Evan, his voice was bright, rehearsed. "Mom, we just want to keep you safe. You've always said you're bad with technology." I said I preferred paper, not prison. He sighed. "You're making this dramatic. You can't handle these things anymore, and that's okay. You're getting older. Let us take care of it." "By stealing?" "By protecting," he said, voice low now. "Don't ruin this." The call ended before I could respond. That afternoon, Claire stopped by. She didn't knock, just walked in like she owned the place. "We're selling this house," she said. "You'll move to Willow Pines next month. Nice community. Heated pool. Shuffleboard. It's my home. And it'll stay in the family. Think of it as optimizing assets." I laughed bitterly. "You mean liquidating me?" Claire set a brochure on the table. "You can decorate your new suite however you want. It's time to accept help." I stared at the glossy pictures of smiling retirees, every one of them holding a cup of tea like they didn't know what was missing. "I'll never move there," I said. Claire smiled thinly. "We'll see." When she left, I sat by the window as the snow began to fall, soft and steady. My hands shook, not from age but from rage I couldn't spend. I looked around the living room, the curtains I'd sewn myself, the cabinet my husband built, the photo of Evan at 5 years old holding his first baseball glove. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept hearing his voice. "You can't handle it anymore." Maybe he was right. Maybe I couldn't handle what he'd become. Just after midnight, I found the ledger again. The old one from my postal days. Brown leather, edges cracked. Inside, blank columns waited like open arms. At the top of the first page, I wrote in slow, deliberate strokes, "Liabilities, one son, one thief." Then under assets, I wrote, "Memory, patience, proof." I didn't have a plan yet, but I had a record. And for a woman like me, that was the beginning of war. The next morning, I dressed in my old postal uniform. It still fit, barely. The badge glinted in the sunlight that cut through my kitchen window. I hadn't worn it since retirement, but that uniform meant something. Precision, accountability, proof. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat at the table with my ledger open, writing names, dates, and figures. Every withdrawal, every transfer, every automatic payment Evan claimed to have simplified. Then I called George Whitaker, a man I hadn't spoken to in years. We'd worked side by side at the Postal Credit Union. He'd retired as head of internal audits. When he answered, his voice was still warm. "Margaret Allen, you sound like a woman building a case." "I am," I said. "My son forged my authorization and took my accounts. I need to trace the wires." "Do you have transaction dates?" "Down to the hour," I said, "and I still have my original banking stamp. He's using copies." He whistled. "That's a felony if you can prove it. That's why I'm calling you." By noon, George met me at my kitchen table with his old laptop. Together, we accessed archived routing ledgers through his retired employee portal. He showed me how to trace the movement of funds, how each transaction leaves a timestamp signature buried in metadata. 3 hours later, we found it. A direct transfer from my trust account to an entity named Emmy Capital LLC. Registered to Evan Grant and Claire Grant, mailing address, my own home. I felt my pulse slow. They used my address to make it look like I was the beneficiary. George leaned back. "Classic shell game. They'll claim consent unless you have notary logs." "My notary seal is missing," I said. He smiled faintly. "Then we get it back the hard way." He helped me file a digital retrieval request. The log showed Claire had used the seal at 9:14 a.m., 2 days before the transfer, notarizing a family trust amendment. George looked up. "Margaret, they left fingerprints." I nodded slowly. "And I'll make sure they see them in public." He grinned. "You thinking legal?" "I'm thinking visible." Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered everything. Bank copies, timestamps, call logs. I even printed screenshots from Claire's realtor page, their new house listing financed through ME Capital. Every night I practiced reading my notes aloud, calm and steady, like I was giving a speech. Because that's exactly what I planned to do. Thanksgiving was coming. They'd already sent out glossy invitations for a family gratitude dinner. The cover photo was their mansion under gold leaves. I wrote my RSVP in blue ink. I'll be there with receipts. Then I called George again. Can you notarize a reversal authorization for me? Of course, he said. But Margaret, what are you planning? I smiled. Just a little family bookkeeping. Live. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. I'd stopped being the victim. I was the auditor again, and my audit wasn't done. Thanksgiving arrived with the kind of cold that cuts through walls. Evan's new mansion glowed like a stage. Glass walls, valet parking, and a banner that read, "Gratitude is family." I almost laughed when I saw it. Claire greeted me at the door in a gold dress that matched the champagne. "Mom," she said, pretending sweetness, "I'm so glad you came. We were worried you'd still be upset." "I don't stay upset," I said. "I stay organized." She blinked. "Excuse me." Before she could answer, Evan appeared, wineglass in hand. "Mom, you made it." He kissed the air near my cheek. "Please, no tension tonight. Let's just enjoy dinner." "Oh, I intend to enjoy it," I said, handing my coat to the butler. "I even brought something for dessert." Inside, the dining room looked like a magazine spread. 20 guests, crystal glasses, 2 roasted turkeys. At the head of the table, a laptop connected to a massive TV displayed the family photo they'd chosen as wallpaper: Evan, Claire, and me, cropped small in the corner. Evan raised his glass. "To family, to faith, and to good fortune." The room echoed, "Cheers!" I waited until the laughter settled, then tapped my fork gently against my plate. "Before we eat," I said, "I'd like to share something too." Claire's smile tightened. "Mom, maybe later." "No, dear, now." I walked to the TV, plugged in the flash drive from my purse, and pressed play. The screen changed. Rows of numbers appeared. Wire transfers, timestamps, bank logos. Gasps spread like wind. Evan's voice cut in. "Mom, what is this?" "This," I said, "is where my savings went. Every penny, every fake signature, every unauthorized withdrawal." Claire laughed, brittle. "This isn't proof, it's confusion." Confusion? I stepped aside as the next slide appeared, a screenshot of the notary log with her name, timestamped 9:14 a.m., 2 days before the transfer. Guests began whispering. One of them, a banker, muttered, "That's fraud." Evan's smile collapsed. "Mom, stop this. You're embarrassing yourself." "No, son," I said. "You did that for me when you called me too old to understand my own money." The next slide showed the house's down payment receipt. ME Capital LLC, sender, Patricia Allen Trust. "Recognize the initials?" I asked. ME Margaret's earnings. Evan slammed his glass on the table. "You think this makes you right? You're destroying our reputation." "Reputation?" I said softly. "You destroyed it when you made me beg to buy my own groceries." Then I looked to the end of the table. George stood calm as a judge. "For the record," he said, "we've filed a formal fraud report. Reversal authorization is complete. The funds are being returned as we speak." Evan's face drained of color. "What?" "Check your account," I said. He pulled out his phone, fingers trembling. Claire snatched hers too. I watched their faces change, horror replacing arrogance. "Balance $0, he whispered. Guests murmured. Someone actually clapped. I smiled faintly. "Happy Thanksgiving!" Then I turned to the stunned crowd. "Dinner's on me, technically." The silence broke into scattered applause, awkward and electric. I gathered my purse, nodded to George, and walked out through the door they once told me I'd never control again. Outside, the cold air didn't bite anymore, because the math and the justice had finally balanced. By sunrise, the footage was everywhere. A guest had filmed the entire dinner scene. My calm voice, the slides on screen, Evan's face draining color as his family fund unraveled. The clip hit social media before dessert was even cleared. Headline after headline screamed, "Son defrauds 68-year-old mother, gets exposed during Thanksgiving." Reporters camped outside their mansion by noon. Claire posted a teary statement online. "This is a misunderstanding. We were helping Mom manage her estate." Within hours, the comments tore her apart. Evan called me 8 times. I didn't answer. By the 9th, he left a voicemail. Mom, please, I'm ruined. You didn't have to make it public. We can fix this quietly. Quiet was the luxury they took from me. Instead, I forwarded the voicemail to the bank's fraud department. George sent confirmation that the full $812,000 had returned to my account, along with an additional freeze order on any business tied to ME Capital LLC. That night, I brewed tea and sat by the window, watching the news anchor's tight smile as she said, "Tonight, we bring you a story of poetic justice." Evan and Claire's faces flashed on the screen, walking out of their mansion as reporters shouted questions. I didn't feel triumph, just equilibrium. The next morning, someone knocked. I expected another journalist, but it was Detective Harris, a calm woman in her 40s. "Mrs. Allen, we've received your fraud documentation. It's airtight. They'll likely face felony charges, but before that, I need your statement." "Take anything you need," I said. "Everything's organized by date and witness." She smiled faintly. "You'd make a good investigator." "I was one," I said, "just without a badge." After she left, I went through the house, the one Evan wanted to sell, and reopened every curtain. For months, I'd been hiding inside. Now, light touched every wall again. At noon, the phone rang once more. This time I answered. Evan's voice cracked. "Mom, please, I could go to jail. You don't understand what this will do to me." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You called it simplifying. I call it stealing." "You're my mother." "Yes," I said quietly, "and you made me your victim." Silence, then a choked breath. "I'm sorry." "You're sorry you got caught. Can we fix it?" "No," I said, "we can balance it." He didn't respond. The call dropped. That evening, Claire showed up at my doorstep, eyes red, mascara streaked. She held a folded check. "It's what's left, half of what we have. Please don't press charges." I looked at her. This woman who once called me obsolete. "I don't need your check," I said. "I already cashed something more valuable." "What's that?" "My dignity." She turned and left without another word. 2 days later, the sheriff served the warrant. Fraud, identity theft, financial elder abuse. I didn't celebrate. I documented. I added a final entry in the ledger next to the last line of calculations. Assets recovered. Lesson complete. And beneath it, a smaller note. Justice doesn't shout. It tallies. For the first time in a year, I slept through the night. No fear, no noise, just peace. The sound of a balanced book finally closing. The trial was quick. The evidence was clean, the signatures obvious, and the bank footage undeniable. Evan stood before the judge in the same navy suit he'd worn to my birthday dinner, but now it looked borrowed. His lawyer spoke about family misunderstanding and emotional stress. The judge wasn't moved. "Mr. Grant," she said, "financial abuse is still abuse." Claire wouldn't even meet his eyes. Her plea deal was already filed. Community service, restitution, no contact order. Evan's sentence was lighter than I expected. 3 years probation, asset forfeiture, mandatory repayment. But that wasn't the real punishment. His reputation was gone, his firm dissolved, his so-called friends had disappeared faster than champagne bubbles. When he turned toward me before leaving the courtroom, his voice barely carried. "Mom, I'm sorry. I thought I was helping." I didn't speak. I just looked at him long enough for him to realize help doesn't require a victim. Outside, reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward. "Mrs. Allen, do you feel vindicated? Do you regret exposing your own son?" I gave the same answer to all of them. If silence protected thieves, I'd have stayed quiet. But I built my life on records, not rumors. The bank reinstated my accounts, refunded all fees, and even invited me to host a workshop on senior financial protection. So on a mild Tuesday afternoon, I stood before 20 retirees in the local library, holding up my old postal ledger. "This," I told them, "isn't just paper. It's memory, it's math, it's armor. The world might call you outdated, but your handwriting is proof. Don't let anyone modernize you out of your rights." Applause filled the small room. A woman in the front row whispered, "I wish I'd heard this before my son got hold of my pension." I smiled gently. "Then hear it now. And don't stop until the numbers add up." When I got home that night, I brewed peppermint tea, the same kind my husband used to make. The house was quiet again, but not empty. Every photo, Every drawer, every receipt I'd once guarded now felt like a victory flag. I opened the ledger one last time and wrote, "Final entry, audit complete, liabilities, none, assets, peace." Then I closed the book, pressed my palm over the cover, and whispered, "You were right, Richard. Balance always returns." The wind brushed through the open window, flipping the curtains like pages turning themselves. I didn't stop it. I'd earned the calm that followed chaos. The phone buzzed once more, an unknown number. I let it ring. Because tonight, I wasn't the mother waiting for permission. I was the woman who taught her own son what truth costs. Outside, snow started falling again, soft and steady. I watched it settle over the porch, covering the footprints Claire had left the day she came to beg. By morning, they'd be gone completely. I smiled, took a slow sip of tea, and turned off the lamp. The light of my life wasn't in their approval anymore. It was in the ledger I refused to let them close. If you've listened this far, thank you. Tell me in the comments. What would you have done in my place? And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Stories Women 65 Plus USA because stories like mine deserve to be heard.